Let's get some light. That's a little better. We're live. It's 11:52. I'm back. After cold beverage. Was on vacation for quite a while, for 7 days or something. We went down to Mexico. It was awesome. Got to do diving and all kinds. I got some funny stories I'll be telling you guys about that on these ongoing live feeds. But today I got, and this actually comes from a while back. I had a guy ask me about using a nitrous setup, and that's the photo that I have. You look at the thumbnail. The thumbnail basically is, you know, your pretty kind of standard run-of-the-mill plate nitrous setup. So when you install a nitrous setup on your, this is for a I think it's a 4150 carbureted application. So on anything, a Dodge, the one I'm showing is actually on a Pontiac or a Buick, which is cool because it's other guys. But, you know, basically anything you put a carburetor on, this is a plate between the carburetor and the intake manifold, and then you inject the nitrous into that. You know, when the solenoid opens up, you also have a fuel solenoid that opens up, and then you have a pressurized fuel going to that. So you inject fuel and nitrous into it, and away you go. Like a nitrous setup works great. So somebody was asking me if I thought that you could use that as an auxiliary fuel or a supplemental fuel system for like a boosted application. So let's say you have a Vortec supercharger. So shout out to the Vortec guys and the AFR guys and the BTR guys, everybody that helps out with it. And hopefully we're got our fingers crossed, maybe try to do something with the guys from Monster Energy. It'll be cool. But if we're doing this, and if you're doing this boosted application, whether it's a turbo blowing through a carburetor or a supercharger, a Vortec, a ProCharger, Torque Storm, any kind of boosted application, we're blowing through the carburetor. How do we get more fuel? Well, normally the way that we do it on a blow-through application, we use that CSU carburetor. You can use, there are a number of different boosted applications that have dedicated blow-through style carburetors. Like the CSU utilizes the boost reference power valve, so adding fuel basically when the thing sees boost. And then, you know, you also, with the carburetor, are doing the normal stuff. You're doing jetting and stuff. So that works very well. So you can get the carburetor, you know, the amount of air that goes through the carburetor draws a certain amount of fuel. The amount of fuel that it draws through is based on the jetting. And then, you know, when we're flowing more and boost comes on, you get that power enrichment from the boost reference power valves. That's pretty normal. You can also enclose the carburetor inside an enclosure, and that works good too. That way you can kind of use not a dedicated, you know, a blow through kind of carburetor. But they were asking me, well, what if we had a carburetor and we had a situation where we're blowing through, like we just have a carburetor, just an old carburetor, and you got a bond on top of it, and we're running that. Can we use this and maybe activate it and add fuel? And I thought about it. I'm like, well, I don't know if anybody's ever tried it. I've never tried it, but there'd be no reason why you couldn't, because we're just adding fuel. Just like if you add, you know, if you got a water meth kit on it and you're just using methanol or something, you're adding fuel. You could add gasoline through it. I think that they recommend that you don't do that, but you could. Anything that you're doing, like when we activate a nitrous setup on a fogger setup, we're just spraying the nitrous and the fuel in all the time. The same kind of thing. We're in this plate setup, we're adding the fuel, we're adding the nitrous, and we get lots of power. So if you have boost on top of that, and you were in a situation where you needed more fuel, particularly if you're in a situation where you need more fuel that's not all the time, like you don't need it from 3,000 RPM to 7,000. Let's say you only need it when boost starts getting higher, if you had a rising boost curve like on a Vortec or something. And so then this thing would only activate at some given boost pressure, which you could do with a Hobbs switch. And then you could, you know, you could even get clever, like what they do with the water mesh setups, where they ramp it in based on boost. But if you activated this and it needed more fuel, you could use the jetting in that to do that. And then because you have two, essentially on any single nitrous plate, you have two systems. You have a fuel system, a fuel solenoid, and it's spraying fuel through one set of, you know, openings. And then you have the nitrous, which is spraying through fuel and through another set of openings, and usually some kind of divider bar that has holes in it. And so you could get different amounts of fuel that you could vary with one and then the, you know, one and then the other. And then also with jetting through each of those, and then also with pressure through each of those. So the amount of fuel that you would add could be varied. You could adjust it quite a bit. So it might be something that's useful. So let me know out there if anybody has ever tried anything like that, because this, if you look at it, this is just an analog version of a lot of things that we used to use back in the day. We'd use these like little microfuelers, or guys would use the enrichment, like the cold start idle, the fifth injector they used to call it, or they would have one or team two of them together. I mean, the Callaway Turbo Corvette did that. They had essentially a little block with two injectors in it that they would add fuel into it. Now, the good thing about that is, and this is something to be considered when you're thinking about doing anything like this, is the fuel portion of it on the boosted application is not usually the problem. Because if you're 10 to 1 to even as much as 12 to 1, the thing's going to work. It's going to work pretty well. Ideally it's 11 and a half, something like that. 10 to 1 works. We've even run them way down richer than that. It's not great. And, you might have plug problems if you're driving around like that, but under boost, even in the 9s has worked. Just, you got 17 or 18 thousandths plug gap. It works. And so you have a big range of useful like air fuel ratio. And we've shown that it doesn't have a big change in power from doing that. So if you can get it pretty close, it's going to work. But the timing thing is really the big thing. And if you have the ability to control timing, that's really the key thing. But for this discussion, we're primarily talking about fuel. So those microfuelers, they did it just with injectors. So you'd pulse with the injectors, you'd spray additional fuel. And the nice thing with those is that you could base it off of RPM and load and boost and all that stuff. And then you could spray in the amount of fuel that you needed. This would be an analog version of that kind of digital thing. You'd be just doing it with, the electronics portion of it would just be opening the solenoid. But if you wanted to get really clever and like double throw down on your analog setup, you could pulse width modulate the solenoid. So, this way, when we're doing progressive nitrous setups, you could do that with progressive fuel setups too. So you could get really kind of elaborate on introducing the amount of fuel that you'd want. So I'm pretty sure that it would work. And, then you could do things with the different kind. Usually when you add this kind of spacer above a car, like I'm showing it with a dual plane, I think the factory intake or an Edelbrock intake that's been painted. I can't remember which one that one was. But if you're doing it with a dual plane, you add a spacer to it, you're changing the signal to the carburetor if you're still running it on a carburetor. And when you're not under boost, you're basically running it just as a carbureted kind of thing. And so you're changing the signal. So you might want to change the fuel a little bit. And maybe you could do that. Maybe you could cure some of that by, injecting it a little bit earlier or something. But it'd be interesting to see. And I'm sure that, guys that are racers and that people that had spent enough time with it, that they could dial in this kind of thing and get it to work for the application. That'd be particularly the case if you were looking at doing this as a race application. So if you have to go up and stage the car and you do your burnout thing, you back up and you get ready and you have, whether it's a stick car or an automatic, you're up on the converter, you're up on a two-step, whatever you're on, and then you launch it. The thing only has to work for that sequence of things. Like you're not also asking it to go try to get 50 miles per gallon and tow a trailer and do all these other things. So dialing it in for all of those things, and especially if you have data logging to show you, hey, the air fuel is doing this during this, and this is where we need to adjust it. And you can go, okay, well, now how can we do that mechanically? And then in these kinds of situations, this is usually the problematic portion of doing it with an analog system like this, is that how can we do it and have also not have it affect somewhere else, where it's like we can cure it here, but now we've created another problem here. How can we add more fuel at 2,800 under load at 3 pounds, because that's our launch thing, and then not have it hurt like at 20 pounds or wherever we're running it at. So that would be the consideration. But again, like I said, guys are really clever and they figure out ways to do this. And these are the kinds of things where a guy has this and he's like, okay, this is what I have. I'm going to make this work. and then just just head in the sand. I'm not looking at any other options, even though it was something else actually in the end might be more affordable and more useful, and I might be able to make it work if I just got rid of this. But I really also like the guys that are like, this is going to work. I'm making this work. This is my decision. And they just stick to it and make it happen and go after it. And these are the kinds of things that you can do. You can take this kind of system and go and repurpose it and go, oh, this was nitrous. Yeah, but now it's an auxiliary fuel system for my boost application. And then obviously if you needed a bunch of fuel, you could stack two of these together or get some of those the crossbar deals or crosshair deals, like where they have two sets of those and you can run that on it. All of that's kind of good stuff. I like seeing that sort of like ingenuity when guys go, you know what, I got something that will work. And so let's make that work. So let's see what you guys got. Let's see what you guys got going on. So we'll do a poll here. Also work as a boosted. Okay. Would the plate nitrous system also work as a fuel enrichment for a boosted application? So we'll see what we got going on. Yes, I realize the photo is upside down. I'll just change that as soon as we're done. Everybody's in the house. Yep, long lost holder has returned. I have. We went to Puerto Vallarta. It was beautiful. It was nice and sunny. We got to see cool lightning storms. I got to do some scuba diving. We got to go on excursions and do the speedboats that do 180s and then bury the nose and fill the whole thing full of water. And it was just, it was nothing but great. The hard part is coming back and going, wait, now I have to I have to clean my own room. I don't get to eat and drink whenever I want and have somebody bring me stuff and have everybody be nice to me. It was, it was fantastic. But let's hear about what you guys got going on. We have been doing more testing. When I say we, I mean, since I was on vacation, I mean, basically Jimmy has been doing more testing with the turbo kit. We got a bunch more exhaust testing that we're doing, different size catbacks, different size downpipes and things. So that's good. And then hopefully I'm going to talk to him. We'll have another meeting again tonight. And I want to talk to him about doing the 3584, maybe getting that on there and seeing more street driving on that. So that'll be kind of cool. Oh, FedEx messing with my parts delivery. That's not good. Do you mean that boosted motors that use an enclosure box do not need special modifications other than jetting? We have gotten away with not using blower specific or blow through specific carburetors on like Vortec applications with enclosures on them. When we've done high horsepower stuff, we have combined those two things. We've had the enclosures and a carburetor, like with boost reference power valves and stuff. We've had all of that. And so that, I think, made it ultimately a better combination. But the enclosure has worked without there being dedicated blow-through carbureted applications. Richard, got an LY6, flat tops. Can you use a sloppy stage 3? Yes, your LY6 won't have flat tops because it'll actually have valve reliefs because they had that for the variable cam timing. So, but you will have that camshaft will work on that motor. I voted yes because I intend to use a nitrous system for additional fueling for nitrous also. No reason you couldn't do it for boost. There you go. I like that. I like the go-to attitude. I like the can do. Let's have it. Let's see. I did that with my water methanol injection kit. Used 100% methanol, only after 15 pounds to 20 pounds. Was a Band-Aid for my small in-the-tank fuel pump. I was thinking about this, and I'm like, well, we used FMUs, and it's, it can't be any more rudimentary than that. Should I say I'm considering doing that using a supplemental race gas tank? There you go. And a lot of guys do that with nitrous too, and there's no reason you couldn't do this with boost. is driving around, because everyone wants to drive around and pump gas and save money. I put 87 in my truck, so I'm one of those guys. I am the people. But if you put, have a 5-gallon tank or whatever of race gas or E85 or whatever you wanted to put in there, and run that as your supplemental fuel. A lot of guys do that for nitrous. They have race gas for that they use as higher octane stuff. You could do it with E85. You could do it with methanol. Anyone know of a cheap NOS kit for my LS1? I might have one of those. Cheesy Key. I might have one of those for sale. Methanol injection is the way. Forget the water stuff. Not sure how much my stock C6 Z06 in-tank pump supports, but it got to be close to the limit on the motor. All of them are like 600 or 700. Richard, LY6 I'm talking about, I replaced the pistons. Okay, that makes sense. With true flat tops. There's no valve relief. Okay, yeah, if you put different pistons in, obviously you can put flat tops in it. That's what I was wondering if it would clear. Yeah, the sloppy stage 3 should be fine. I like to be able to drive around, pump gas, because I just did a 3,200 mile road trip. Nice. That's a serious drive. That's like all the way across the United States. Race gas for 85 just isn't. It just isn't everywhere. Yeah, you could do that. You definitely can. I like to just run nitrous with E85 with flex fuel sensor, but not sure my in-tank pump can handle it. Yeah, that's the other consideration is particularly with E85, is if you go with E85, you need to have big enough injectors and a big enough pump to support that. Cheesy Key, send me an email. I'll put my email address down. I won't know until I go down to West Tech to look and see if I have something in my storage. I think I do. What you got to tell me what intake manifold and stuff you have, because I might have a plate that goes on the front of in between the throttle body and the intake manifold. That's my email. I'm going to stock LS6 intake manifold throttle body. Okay, so the 78 millimeter. Driving around on pump gas is a requirement for me as well. Yeah, pump gas is really important for lots of people. E5 is cool, but not available. Yeah, that's why we did when we did the turbo setup, when Jimmy built I'll put all the turbo stuff on the Tahoe, that I made sure that we did pump gas stuff because guys want that. Actually, in my car will put me 800 to 850 at the crank, so I figure supplemental tank is safer. Yeah, that would be a lot. That's plenty of power. When I was down in Mexico, I was talking to almost everybody that I spoke to was about car related or power related stuff. But when I went out to do the scuba diving, I got lucky because I just did an excursion, basically a scuba diving excursion. But I was the only one. It was me and the boat captain, young kid, and the master diver that took me down. It was cool. We went about 30 meters or 20 meters, not 30 meters would be a lot. 20 meters, 60 something feet, I think. But when we were driving out there, the boat that he had twin, like 75 horse Mercs on it, I think. So I was asking him, how fast does this thing go? Do you ever race any of the other boat guys? Because you do. Hey everyone, been super busy. Starting school at UTI. Nice. And building some motors. That's good. Good place to go learn and get experience. Because once you have that, once you take apart a motor and put it back together, you'll be like, oh yeah, they're all like that. The crank spins around. There's connecting rods, the pistons go up and down. You just got to learn some little things about specific things. But taking apart an LS and a small block Chevy or a small block Ford, whatever, it's all the same thing. And even like a Coyote motor, it's the same thing. Crank spins around, the pistons go up and down. You have big chains connected to camshafts, but it's not any different than the little chain that's connecting the camshaft on an LS. You have marks on the chains, you put them in the right spot, they go on the little colored tabs or doweled tabs on the camshafts, and you just put them in the right spot. It's not, I remember having this discussion with Brule. He's like, oh yeah, there's too much going on there. I said, there's not. There's really not. It's particularly if you don't take the secondary chain off, but like on a 4-valve deal, like on a Coyote or even a 4-valve Cobra motor. I said, if you're just taking the primary chains off, I said, there's a colored key like a master lock on your old bicycle chain. There's one of those down here, and there's one of them up here, and there's a mark on this sprocket, and there's a mark on that sprocket, and you put it at TDC, and you put that one there and that one there, and if they're there, and you put the tensioner on. I said, that's all it is. It's not anything magic, and he's a really, really sharp guy. So I'm like, you're making yourself like too stressed out about this. On that road trip with Smoky Mountains, Tail of the Dragon, up to Ohio. Nice. That is a long road trip. It's nice to get lucky every once in a while. 1,900 miles of travel, and the rest was spirited driving. There you go. Jake told me to use my flamethrower 3 coil on the flamethrower 2 module. A year later, the coil failed, melted the top of the distributor cap to the rotor. The plug wire ends disintegrated. Was there an incompatibility between those two? Like, was one of them a CDI and one of them was inductive or something? Was there something weird going on? Mocking up my motor in my kitchen currently. Nice. Already found a few issues. Glad I didn't wait to mock it up. Yeah, I'm guilty of that, of not mocking them up a lot. I just find the thing when I'm during assembly and then get mad that, okay, now I've got to take it apart and go back to the machine shop or grind it or do whatever, make it work. But a mock-up is a really important thing, especially if you are doing something different. If you're putting together a stroker motor, particularly for that, you don't know, like even if they've done all the clearancing on, the most common things are pan rails, depending on what engine family it is, pan rails, and then the bottom of the cylinder bore is very common, but also other things like, okay, I did all that, and we ground all that's clearance and all that works, like rod bolts and camshafts sometimes on stroker small block Chevys, for instance, but also the oil pump. You didn't do any of that clearancing when the oil pump was in place, because you wouldn't unless you were checking it to make sure that nothing hit. Sometimes the oil pump hits on a crank throw. You're like, oh, yeah, that's a problem. Now we got to solve that. A lot of times it's easy because you can remove and the sacrificial thing would be the oil pump. So, we got to clearance an ear off of it or whatever, and then make that work. You can do that. But you find that stuff in one with doing the mock-up, and then also with experience. When you've put together a bunch of Windsor motors, that you put a stroker Windsor together, that's something that you look for. And then also on, like I was saying, with sometimes with the pan rail, that can become a problem. And then the pan itself. Sometimes the pan rail's been clearance, and then the pan overhangs it, and then you got to do a little bit of magic hammer work on the pan. Mocking up my motor in my kitchen. Richard, if there was a specific brand, for example, BMW, Volvo, what would you like to specialize in for a day-to-day job per se? That wouldn't be my thing. I wouldn't ever do that. I would never do just one. What you should look at if you're determining if that's the direction that you want to go in, look for viability of a job. Look at what pays better. Look at what kind of job openings there would be. There would be more of that than the particular motor that you like to work on, I think, if you're thinking about doing that as a job, because the amount of money that you make should be a consideration for what you're doing. You should consider your time valuable. I didn't do that when going into the not lucrative world of the automotive industry. Instead of going into advertising like I have my degree in, would have been much better. But I did it because I love it, though. Using Holley HP and aftermarket fuel rails to run a Ford G302 injector, 47 pounds, 2.7 bar injectors in an LS. That's what you're using? How do you tune for pump E85? The regulations say it can be anywhere from 51 to 83%. When we're tuning it, We tune using a lambda meter. So the lambda meter tells us what the air fuel is. And whether it's 51 or 83%, it doesn't matter for us because we're never that close to the detonation range, which would be the timing thing. Even 51% will take, let's say that we were only running 10 or 12 degrees under pump gas. We'd be running 18 or 20 under using methanol, or not methanol, using E85. I'm going to ask more than once if I degree the cam on my LS engine. Not even sure how that would be possible unless you had adjustable cam gear. You do need an adjustable cam gear for that, but the number of people that buy cams versus the number of people that would degree it, particularly guys, almost nobody I know degrees a camshaft that's doing a camshaft swap with the car, with a motor in the car. I would be surprised if it's even 1%. And even guys that are building them have like doing the swap out, like they went and bought a junkyard motor, which is very common. They're swapping it into something. They want to put a cam in before they do that. That would also be very common. Them degreeing the camshaft would be very uncommon. Don't have any way to adjust it. Even if it were out, the vast majority of them are correct. Put in ... And when we do our testing, that's the way that we test them. Normally, I would just test them ... The only time I've ever degreed cams is when I was doing Engine Master stuff. What pressure should I run the fuel system? I think the HP software has it set for 3-bar stock. The pressure that you want to run with the system isn't going to matter. The only thing that matters is if it affects the amount of fuel flow that you want from the injector. So is your injector big enough at 43 PSI to support your power level? Do you need to run it at 58 PSI or, it's basically 40 and 60, let's say. Do you need to run it at a higher pressure, which will help with obviously fuel flow? That injector now will flow more at 60 PSI than it will at 40 PSI. Do you need that additional fuel flow? That's the big consideration. Everything else would be just minor. The secondary thing that you would consider if you're thinking about raising the fuel pressure is you have to have more fuel pump for that. So the fuel pump that you have will support more fuel flow at the lower pressure. Again, can you make that with can you make, like if you're trying to do a 400 horsepower motor, you have 47 pound injectors, you're running whatever fuel pressure you want. It doesn't matter. You got way more than you need. If you're at the limit of what those 47 pounders, if they flow that at 43 PSI, raising the fuel pressure is probably a good idea. So the course I'm taking is for auto, diesel, EV, hybrid technology, working on everything. That's good. You should be well-rounded. You'll be more marketable in the job market if you're well-rounded. Are you living alone? How the heck are you allowed to mock up an engine in the kitchen? Oh, yeah. The tri-lambdas. I had a feeling, is LSA what makes a cam chop? No. LSA is one thing, but even something with a tight LSA that has no duration is not going to chop. Happy wife, happy life. I say no wife. Nobody complained about the motor in the kitchen. That's, yeah, you do what you want. 799-243 heads are the same. Yes. What's happening? Hot stuff. That's right. Isn't the green cams more common with 2JZ engines? They always seem to have fancy cam gears. With different kinds of motors, cam gears have been sold and are readily available. Particularly Honda cam gears have always been very popular on the B and D series and on the H. So basically all the Honda stuff makes it easier to manually adjust them. Now they went with variable cam timing on the later K series stuff. So it's a lot easier to do that with a computer than it is to do manually. I remember going through in one of the 3 books that I did on Honda stuff. I did a lot of testing on B series stuff because we did the Bonneville car, the Civic that we ran at Bonneville. And we did a lot of cam gear adjustments. And when you do it, a lot of guys don't realize that you have to also change the ignition timing while you're doing that. And so you go through it, but doing that is hard because you have to leave the, like, let's say you were first testing the intake cam. You have to leave the exhaust cam in one spot. Let's say it's in its neutral 0 spot. And then you do the swing through on the intake cam. You go from, I don't know, +3 or 4 or 5, and then to -3 or 4 or 5, and go, okay, it like this or didn't like this or whatever. And then now you got to go over and move the exhaust cam 1 degree in one direction and re-go through all that. And then move it another degree and go through all that. It's a lot of time and effort on the chassis. And also, it's not just a matter of moving it one and then redoing the test. You got to make sure if you're really looking for onesies and twosies, I mean, everything else has to be the same. It's hard to do on a chassis dyno. It's not for the faint at heart. I did degree my cam in my small block Chevy when it was in the car. Have you tested similar cams with and without VVT? We have run fixed cams. Like we did that on a 3-valve 4.6 motor. We ran the cam locked in place. I don't know exactly where it was locked in place because we don't know what the default setting was. But then we manually moved the cam by like 9 degrees, which is what it moves when they have the variable cam actuated. But again, I don't know where the starting point was. And I don't know where the ending point was. When we retarded the cam, it did make more power on top and did make less down low, which exactly what you know that when they do variable cam, at least at wide open throttle, that's what's going to happen. But the amount that they're moving the cam is way more at part throttle and idle and tip in and all of these things than it is at wide open throttle. Like I said, they got 50 degrees or more of potential movement, assuming that they have enough piston to valve clearance for that. But they're only moving it by 9 degrees at wide open throttle, not very much. Flamethrower 3, 3.2, and the Pertronics Flamethrower 2 is 0.6. Pertronics said not to mix and match coils. Jag support said they never have to clean their distributor caps. What's better for a street-driven car, stage 2 or stage 3 cam? I wouldn't go with either one of those on a street driver. I would go with something smaller. Turbo or Pro Charger. Which do I prefer? I don't prefer either one of them. I test both of them and show you what they do and show you the different power curves. And then you get to decide which one of those that you want. A turbo makes more power per pound of boost because it doesn't have parasitic loss associated with driving a supercharger. The supercharger, any supercharger, not just a Pro Charger, but a Vortec, a TVS or Kenny Bell or whatever, Whipple, whatever. All of those require power from the motor to drive them to then give you extra boost. So there's a net gain, but the turbo doesn't really have that. It has a little bit, but not anywhere near what a Pro Charger has. So you may lose 100, 200, 300 horsepower on a really high horsepower, high RPM supercharged stuff. You'll lose that amount to drive the supercharger. You're not going to lose that on a turbo application. But there are a lot of reasons to go with a centrifugal supercharger, like for no prep stuff. I'm excited for the test. Excited for the day when I get to do some testing. Can we do a 4G63 junkyard build and do some testing? I don't think I have anything to put a 4G63 in. Question you posted is what guys have been telling me to do with my blow-through setup. I'm going in E85, E90. Also, would a plate setup help? Cylinder distribution. No, the cylinder distribution is really going to be a function of the intake manifold. Apparently, Jake thinks you can mix and match Pertronics coils. I would defer to the Pertronics guys who hopefully have done more testing than sales guys from Jegs. I advise 5/4 race cams for street driven who need something that can idle. There you go. How do you feel about a sloppy mechanics cam? I have tested many of them. In fact, I've tested all of them. I've tested a sloppy stage 1, a sloppy stage 1.5, sloppy stage 2, and a sloppy stage 3. You can look up, that video is up. So if you want to see how they all do, you can look that up. I thought Matt's a great guy. I've talked to him a few times, and he does good stuff over there. And those are all Elgin cams, and then other people have copied them. Let's see if I can get this thing to come back into view. Where are we at on our poll here? Will the plate nitrous system also work as a fuel enrichment for a boosted application? 78% saying, I think that it would. Just, is it precise? Whatever happened to the Big Bang Big Block? I haven't run it yet. Yeah, our cam and springs is pretty inexpensive. I don't know what their kit is included in. Is included in their kit. Cams and valve train. Yeah, cam and springs is $269 for a low buck truck cam. And you could get it for less with the little ripper cam. I think. No. Oh yeah. Yeah, 235, 236 for the ripper cam and springs. So if you're looking for cost stuff. Have you ever thought about doing videos on boost control strategies to see exactly what the different steps will do? Like, for instance, what, Mitch? We could tailor boost curves, you know, based on RPM, or I don't know what else you want to base it on the engine dyno. Boost control strategies are usually, like when we do an electronic boost controller, we know what that does. It keeps the wastegate closed until a predetermined boost. So you don't have the boost kind of, you don't have the wastegate kind of sneaking open on its way to being all the way open. And like, let's say we set it at 10 pounds. When it gets up to 7 or 8 pounds, it's already starting to open. With a boost controller, it doesn't do that. It holds it closed because you got pressure going to the top of the gate, and that works. And then it holds it, and then all of a sudden it opens. That's better. That's better for control. And you get a little bit of extra power in that range where it started to open. But otherwise, I don't know what other strategies you're talking about. Are you talking about for different RPMs, for different gears? You're gonna have small block Chevy stuff on the store. We have small block Chevy stuff. With the lifters work on small block Chevys, the turbos work on small block Chevys, the pumps would work on small block Chevys. But other than that, I don't think we're gonna ever have small block Chevy cams. What's a sweet spot for E85? We run all of it in the 11s, but I don't. It'll run leaner than that. It'll run in the 12s, but we just don't like to do that for safety. I think I read somewhere the fully dressed 426 Hemi weighs 800 pounds. It's a lot. I remember Brule telling me, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it is now, but it was a lot. It was a big difference between the weight of the crank and the rods and the pistons, the weight of that setup compared to a big block Chevy is a lot more on the Hemi. Yeah, DA Power Ranger, go check out richardholdenerperformance.com. Stuck on the side of the road 2 weeks ago waiting for parts, and Summit sends me a 350 cap for my 292. Yeah, that's not going to work. Rebuilding a monojet isn't that hard, but metering rod adjustments. Uh-oh. Would you recommend in the tank fuel pump or external fuel pump? It depends on what you're trying to do. Are you just replacing something that already has an in the tank pump? In the tank pumps, the factory has already shown that they're excellent and they work very well. They're quieter. Depends on your needs. Can you get by with whatever power level you're trying to reach with a single in the tank pump, like one of our 525 pumps? Works really good up to, I don't know, where are we at? 6. I don't think we could do 700 or something at the tire with a single pump, but you might get to a point where you need 2 of those, and then people have drop-in dual pumps. The thing I don't like about external pumps is you got to make sure that you're either feeding that with another pump or that you're gravity feeding it, and then the inlet from the tank going to that pump has to be big enough. Also has to be screened so that you don't. You want to feed it enough fuel because you're gravity feeding it, and you want to make sure that it never goes dry. And then also you want to make sure that it's filtered. Hey, come on back to me. There you go. That's all you got to do. Now just stay right there. I'd love some way of implementing on a turbo car what GM has done with a ZR1, where it's doing some kind of anti-lag off throttle to keep 7 or 8 pounds of boost ready to go for when you get back on the throttle. Yeah, that would be cool if that's desirable for your situation. Any idea what damage could be done if a signal wire and a power wire were accidentally touching one another? Is it a 5-volt signal or is it a 12-volt signal? And if they're touching, if you've basically grounded a hot wire, you definitely could hurt the ECU. Yeah, I think that the hydraulic roller lifters are common on a hydraulic roller lifter small block Chevy and an LS. Yeah, take a look at the wires and make sure that they're not melted. External fuel pump is the way. Yeah, for 600 horsepower, I definitely would do an internal pump. Got my 06 Silverado tuned, and now when I let off the gas while reversing and the RPMs drop, it acts like it's not going to catch itself and occasionally stalls. Any ideas? I'm not really a tuner for factory stuff. I'd have to ask Joel, maybe something like that. Engines rebuilt with NSR cam, Trailblazer SS, rails injectors, more mods. It sounds like a tune issue, but I don't know exactly what the issue is because I don't have really any experience street tuning or even performance tuning other than the limited amount that I saw Joel and Jimmy do when we were doing the turbo stuff. Signal wire. Skullman said signal wire and power wire connect could mess up a module, but not necessarily damage it. It only messes it up a little bit. It's only mostly messed up. Yes, definitely hit the like buttons. We got like, you know, we like the cars that go boom. Yes, we're Tigra and Bunny, and we like the boom. So ECU for sure. You don't know. Some of them are really touchy, and some of them are not. Big Bang guys like the boom. If using 93 on a motor and raised gas for nitrous kit, will this negate some of the timing retard? No, I still wouldn't negate the timing retard. All right, Scott, we'll see you, man. Your tuner should have resolved that problem. It should not do that. No, and that should be a fairly easy thing to explain. If your tuner's good and he's done lots of street stuff, it should be an easy thing to explain to him. Cars that shoot fire are better than cars that do not shoot fire. I agree. Having flames during the decel is cool, or putting it up on a two-step and having it bang and pop. That's all cool because people like that. Just average people, not even like car guy people, but you know, even little kids or whatever. They're like, "Ah, look at that. That's really cool." Yes, it is. It's awesome. One of the things that we did on vacation was you've seen that we call it the blob because that's what they were calling it when we were on our thing. But it's the big airbag that you sit on the end of, and then somebody jumps on it and shoots you up in the air. That was a little brutal. Felt like it compressed my spine. Doesn't worry me when my C6C, I get fire out of only one of the 4 exhausts. Yeah, you wonder what's going on. If you're getting it all the way out of a full exhaust, does your thing have cats on it? All the way out through a cat back? If you're getting out the exit, that's a lot. Path of least resistance. Yeah. What else could it be? Change the starter again, battery and alternator, all new. All that's left would be the ECU. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Check all fuses. Yeah, if you haven't blown something like that, you should be able to see. Does it have? You should be able to figure out, does it have voltage to all the things that it's supposed to have voltage to? Is the thing not starting? Like, what's going on with it? Can you check and see if the injectors are firing? Can you check to see if you have like an RPM signal? Long tubes, 3-inch X-pipe stock NPP muffler. Okay. That's still a long distance. Like we see exhaust flames coming out. The cool thing is you can see them. And I think that the guys, Morris or one of those guys, have done the videos on the dyno where they do the two-step on the dyno. And so they got flames going out of everywhere. But even when you're doing a run, when the wastegate's open, you can see fire coming out of the wastegates. If you turn the lights off, everything's glowing. You can see fire coming out the exhaust and stuff. It's pretty cool. Well, my second tuner, first one installed consistent. It's much better now. I've only installed twice within a month. Could be a sensor issue. Little baby theme. You can see only at night. I do want to get a two-step for my car at some point. Or even if not a two-step, just get the igniter and the little things that spritz fuel out. So that you could get some, like, get the little flamethrower things that like shoot fire out. Those are cool. Like the ones they had on Grease. Go Grease Lightning. And it's draining the battery in the alternators. It sounds like you got a short somewhere. And can you take out the ECU and take the cover off of it and look and see if a lot of times on a circuit board, you can see damage like circuit board systems. Removed it and it looks clean. Okay. That's not good. That's not muy bueno. But the draining the battery is definitely going to be a short. What kind of car is it? Is it a truck or what is it? Could you have hurt one of the body modules? 799s have different valves. Then what? DA Power Ranger. What is your comparison on your question about the heads? School will teach me soon how to use a multimeter. Yeah, and the one that I'm talking about is you're just checking voltage on something. My exhaust, my car gets hot. Welcome back. Yeah, it was cool. The vacation was awesome. You didn't worry about me. I know. (2002) Denali. Okay. Does the radio still work? A 799 to 243 is the same. The only thing that 243 had some of them only on the Corvettes, I think, had lighter weight valves. Radio still works. Okay. Everything's working. Just a weak start. Does the thing start and run? Funny noise from Brent. Sorry. 292 long tube headers, Borla exhaust, Sportronics. Next comes an intake, 500 CFM. We'll try electric turbo on switch. You're going to put an electric turbo on it? It does start and run. Yeah, Chevy Boys suggested a compression test, but if you're just doing electronic stuff, that's probably not the case. I don't think you could have hurt a coil or an injector. Gears still shift. Okay. Power probe is the greatest for electrical diagnostics. My did you say that you put a new starter in it? Because mine was definitely a starter. Mine had worn out. First draw test. Yep, you can do that. Brand new starter. Okay. Yeah, you could put a voltmeter on and see what how far it drops down during starting. So thinking about adding propane with nitrous or boost would be a great experiment. With nitrous, it would keep you from having to modify the fuel system on the rental lease. Yep. But I don't know how a propane setup is going to be easier to install on your rental than like a nitrous and a supplementary fuel thing is going to be. I don't know why one of those would be easier than the other. I'll be back on tonight at 7. Just so you know. Just so everyone knows. And I went down to, before vacation, I drove down to West Tech to just grab my stuff and came back. Grab the Sprint engine. So now I'm going to mate it back to the transmission and get that stuff back in and get the thing ready to take down with me so that we can hook the Haltech up. So I'm excited about that, so we can get that thing running. That will definitely be awesome. So now I got to go and hack up my floorboard to make sure I can access the fuel tank. It'll be easier to, in case we have to, what I'll do is I'll put a 255 in it probably. Or you can get to see the car, the Sprint. I think I have pictures of it up. LS swap or big block for what, Marty? Try a leaf blower on 292 before purchasing an electric turbo. Yeah, it's 7 Pacific time. A leaf blower on a 292, some of the good ones probably flow enough to do something, or at least at the lower engine speeds. The answer is always big block. Yeah, I don't think you'll be unhappy with either one. I think a big block is going to cost more to get the same amount of power from, but you are starting with, like, if you just do a cam and springs in a big block. Well, they just don't have the same, that they always have some sort of limitation. First of all, it's an iron headed thing, which I don't like. It's heavy, and also it's an iron head. I mean, an aluminum head would be a lot better, and there's no factory aluminum heads. So that's a problem. And then a camshaft is not a cheap thing on a big block. Cam and springs. And then if you're getting a Gen 6, which is what I would want to get, the factory EFI is not ideal because it's a long runner deal. And so it'd be better to get a short runner thing. Take up Trailblazer SS intake deal fell through. It hasn't yet. We're still working on it. We just haven't found a good source for them. The answer is always big block, and the answer is always Miata. In a Monte Carlo. Either of those will work good in a Monte Carlo. So plan on getting my Richard Holdner build. Just have to get a little further into school. So are you going to do an LS then? Because that would be cool. And there's so much information out there, not just from me, but from lots of people on how to take them apart and put them back together. It's pretty simple. And the nice thing is you don't really have to take them apart that much. I mean, if you just did a cam and springs, that's not even taking the whole motor apart. I think of Whipple makes a fantastic intake manifold, but for big blocks, yeah, that's a good one. We ran a Vortec on the big block, and it made good power. Even with the stock heads, it did good. I mean, it did better with, Brodex heads on it. It was a lot better with those, and that's the way that I would want to run it, because when we put the Brodex heads on, the compression was really low because we went from the 102 cc chambers to like 120 cc chambers. So I think we probably could have run everything on 87 octane. The important thing isn't choosing a big block or an LS, and also the important thing isn't worrying about what other people think. You need to get the thing that you want, but get it done. That's the important thing. Make a decision and go that direction. There's not a fear of missing out kind of thing. First thing you do, pick how much power you want, and then once you decide how much power you want, because either one of them will make whatever power you want. Power, cost, and then weight is the way that I would look at that. I myself, unless I was just strictly drag racing, I wouldn't pick a big block, because I like going around corners too. And so the car will do everything else better with a smaller, lighter motor. Like I would even lean toward an aluminum motor because it's small, it's lighter. And so it handles better, it brakes better, it would get better mileage if that's a consideration. And with a turbo LS, if that's what you're thinking about doing, there's no limit in how much power you can make. My 300,000 mile 5.3 had good cam bearings, perfect main rod bearings, and 28 thousandths ring gap when I took it apart. Okay, that's good. That's good. I just don't know where the gap change is coming from, because I need to do the math on this. I'm going to do that today. I need to figure out, I need to measure a ring. I need to find out what the inside and outside diameter of the ring is. Well, I can get the outside diameter from bore size plus ring gap. I just don't know how deep the ring is. I could do it for a couple of different, it's just a math thing. So I could do a couple of different ones. So you need to figure out how much the ring needs to wear to change the gap. Like, can we wear it enough where a changing gap is even a thing? Because I know the bores are not wearing, or very, very little. 450. That's oddly specific. I can test the 6 liter right now. Yeah, if you have a ring, just tell me what the depth of the ring is, like how thick the ring is. Not thick, but this way. Going from the outside of the bore to the inside of the ring gap in the piston. I just want to see what that inside and outside diameter of the ring is. That would be good. And then I can do the math on the change. Using a small block mower engine for my bike instead of my big block rider engine for the same reason. I want to deal with the weight. There you go. Yeah, if you ride a motorcycle and you ride a 1 liter bike or a 1300 or a 1400, it's awesome. But I think from a sales standpoint, probably 600s and 750s probably sell more. They're lighter and smaller. More people can ride them. I think even though I would love to have a Hayabusa or a 1400, those bikes are just too big for me. I even bought a 400 Suzuki because I thought that I needed all that power to get up in the hills in the ranch that we used to go to. And turns out I didn't need anything like that. The bike was too big for me. But with my 125, I could go up everything. So it wasn't an issue. A ZX14, yeah, would be good. Just something that will go 200. Like I'm ever going to do that on a bike. That's probably not high on the list. Like a Ninja 400. They used to do a 250. I had a GSXR 750, which I liked a lot, and I had a 600 Ninja and a 500 Interceptor, and all of those were good sized bikes for me. Back to the ITB motor I'm building. Should I run all the runners together for the map signal or just one? I have to drill and plumb it myself. I wouldn't re-drill you could drill, and if you can drill and tap and just put fittings on it and run them to a common one and then run off that, and it doesn't look terrible, that would be the best map signal. But we've run many of them with just a signal from one of them. But again, we're just running it on the dyno. I'm using a 6 horsepower little engine on the bike frame instead of the 12 to 25 horsepower. The engines you've been collecting. It's much lighter. Bike frames and tires don't like the extra weight. Yeah. Roaded GSXR 600 SRAD. 174 was the fastest. That's fast on a bike. My dream has always been to put a liter bike engine or some super bike thing into a Kai-Car Classic Mini. That would be good. One of the guys that has a, I think it's a 1 liter bike engine in a Metro that he's run at Bonneville. First thickness is 0.1395. So 139 thousandths and a half. Circle is I want a transmission that can handle that so I can have a reverse gear. Yeah. That's one of the problems with bike stuff. I mean, for a Bonneville car, it's not a big deal. You just push it. But I can tell you, they're like when we ran, all of the cars that we've run at Bonneville have obviously all had reverse. And so the Civic, I don't think I have a picture handy for that, but the Civic we drove around. I just drove it on the street. I mean, it was fantastic. It was a great little car. It would get 35 miles a gallon. It was great. An electric reverse, yeah, that's a possibility. Ta-da. Probably the only person here that enjoys distinctly slow vehicles. Cracked 30 miles an hour on my last bike with a 49cc 2-stroke. No, I have a Trail 90 that is a 45 mile an hour motorcycle. So I appreciate that. The second ring thickness is 170. I don't know what numbers you're giving me because none of these make sense. I only need one distance. Like if you take the ring and lay it flat on the ground and measure the thickness of the ring, not going down, not on top, but like I said, the outside diameter portion, the mic is on one side, and the inside diameter, the mic is on the other side. I just need to know how thick that ring is. Not thick this way, thick this way. Second ring I tested was used. Top ring was new. My e-bike is slow and I love it. Tops out 31 miles an hour. I want to get one of those. One of the e-bike companies reached out to me to ask me if I wanted to do a test, and I told them that I would. Finishing up my 5.3 build, Chupacabra, MSD, 706 heads. Should I go to 650 or 750? I think either one of them will work. What intake manifold do you have? Got one more minute. We're going to close out our poll at 80%. Oh, it just dropped down to 79 right when I said it. We're going to still call that 80%. And 31 on an e-bike is fine. For what I'm doing, I just want to ride along the side of the road, and I use it to look for snakes. Which I got to see lots of cool stuff in Mexico. There were iguanas right at the place where we were at. They were on the rocks, like right on the beach. And then lots of geckos would come out at night and get all the bugs. Would be awesome to test at what point more ring gap shows a drop in power, NA, or boosted. Yeah, that would be a nightmare test because you have to take the motor apart and change the ring gap. That'd be real time consuming for being on the dyno. I can tell you I've run more than 30,000, so it didn't seem to have an effect on NA power. Pulled a 4-foot snake out of the dryer. What was he doing in the dryer? If you ever get pulled over, make sure you tell them it only goes 20. Why? Is there some sort of regulation for that? Victor Jr. is the intake manifold. It'll probably drive better with the 650. Top ring inner is 3890. Outer is 41. Okay. 3890. 41625. Is this ring for a is this ring for an LS7 or something? I mean, what has a 162 bore on it? Ring is 0.183. That's the kind of number that I was thinking. Got wound up in the fan. Oh, was he in the backside then? 20 miles an hour is classic 2 e-bike, so you're allowed on bike trails and such. Yeah. Electric phone law is 18 to 21. Ideally to minivan right now until I fix my low buck truck and Richard and turbo kit. Turbo kit coming soon. The turbo kit's going to be a little bit, but took me 2 hours to get him out. Was he still alive or was he dead? I'm sure he was dead, right? They usually don't like being chewed up like that. Well, we've been 1 minute has gone. I wonder if that's how snakes are getting in my house. On that note, it is time to go. I mean, for a lot of people, it would frighten them that if you had folded up your laundry or grabbed all your laundry and there was a snake in there. For me, I would be really cool. Obviously, we don't want it to be something venomous, but I have this new Magnum T56 around 2,000 miles on stock shifter, and it's developed a bit of forward and backward play. Should I be worried? Never had this amount of play. I would contact the guys at American Powertrain and ask them. They'll tell you if it's play in the shifter. Usually, play in the shifter can be adjusted. That's pretty simple. Got the little garter snakes. Yeah, those are cool. On that note, it is time to go, but you guys are in luck or not. Well, I will be back tonight